Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm doing it early. Reasons. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and yes, I just got done with kicking my own ass. We're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, but before we do, the usual disclaimers. You're going to find a link to this article in the description box, right alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including the massive archive put together by Autistic Hoya. Also, we have the ever present, self explanatory, and extremely time pertinent, important templates. Folks, sign your name, click on your senator, click on the links, find these senators' phone numbers. Massachusetts must know it is being watched. And we also have the ever present, self explanatory, change.org, shut the Judge Rotenberg Center down petition. Folks, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones. If you have never been to this channel, folks, please, the description box. Look at it. Click on the links, especially the YouTube videos, okay? And folks, yes, not quite as exhausted as normal, but still, we all know I have a bad habit of stumbling over my words on the best of days. So if I do so, my apologies in advance, alright? Okay, we're going back to where we left off this morning. Oh, here we go. I focus in particular on Folcott's 1973-1974 description of an ideal institution for people labeled as mad, as being stimulated, spectacular space whose appearance was key to its curative power, and his concept of discipline as creating medically useful spaces and rendering the bodies of inmates docile. How the fuck are you supposed to make me docile in that place? Good fucking luck. Good fucking luck with that shit. Both Goffman and Folcott describes the essential elements of the institution, including their preoccupation with barriers to social interaction with the outside world and closure, as well as the space that is regulated by norms unique to the space. It is interesting to note that the overlap between the characteristics that Goffman argues define a total institution and what Folcott notes as being key to disciplinary power and the ordering of the theme park. Specifically, that all aspects of life are conducted in the same space and under the same single authority, that each phase of the members' daily activity is carried out in immediate company of a large group of others, all of whom are treated alike and required to do all the same thing together. And thirdly, that all the phases of the day's activities are tightly scheduled, with one activity leading at a prearranged time into the next. Alexander Moore, 1980, describes Disney parks as bundled spaces with entry checkpoints, fully separated from daily life, mimicking almost directly Irving Goffman's 1961 description of the defining characteristics of a total institution, a point which provides a link between the space of the JRC and that of the theme park. We can note that while this obviously applies to spaces and contain otherness such as the JRC, these features also characterize themed spaces such as Disney parks, where all activities are conducted in the same space. Restaurants, snack bars, hotels, and bathrooms are all on site. There is no need to leave the park to meet basic needs. Goffman, 1961, also points out that the people and institutional spaces are moved in blocks as a form of surveillance, because misconduct stands out in relief against the visible, constantly examined compliance of others. Again, this is another feature of the theme parks and institutions like the JRC. Goffman, 1961, states that in total institutions, territories of the self are violated. The boundary that the individual places between his being and the environment is invaded. This research seeks to examine, through the case study of the JRC, how the design of the physical and psychic space of the institution, the JRC Disneyland, is designed specifically to invade and break down the individual, to render the inmate or guest docile, as Folcott would argue. Gun. They may have actually thrown me out of JRC. I got your fucking compliance. For Folcott 1977, the docile body is achieved through discipline, which involves the dissociation of power from the body. Discipline renders relationships characterized by its own as its ones of subjugation. Folcott 1984 argues that discipline is an instrument of power which, through space, time, and daily activities of life, are organized and controlled. Disciplinary power, which Folcott understands as structuring contemporary society, differs from what he calls surveying power, which is characterized in the Middle Ages, and that is exercised more subtly and insidiously, not through brute force, but through the management of space, time, and activity. Disciplinary power, nonetheless, can have violent effects, and its point of application is always the body, both the individual body and the social body. Rutledge, 2016. According to Folcott, 1977, there are four integral techniques of discipline that include enclosure, partitioning, the creation of functional or medically useful spaces, and rank. Folcott, 1977, states, discipline sometimes requires enclosure, the specification of a space heterogeneous to all others enclosed in upon itself. As has been demonstrated by Goffman 1961 and others, the space of the total institution, a category that JRC falls under, in spite of what the fuck they try to tell you, is a space enclosure cut off from the outside world. Students at the JRC are separated from their homes, families, and communities surrounding the center. Moreover, the self-sustaining nature of the JRC makes leaving the JRC premises, including the group home residences, largely unnecessary. For example, the JRC has its own medical staff, dentists, cooks, and many of the rewards earned by students can be met within the main building, the indoor cinema, shops, arcade, and cafe. Kinda makes it really fucking difficult for them to let the outside know what the hell's going on in that space, isn't it? In this way, we can see how the technique of the enclosure is used by the JRC in managing the environment through this body of inmates. Second, Folcott 1977 argues that the partitioning is essential to the function of sites of discipline, but the principle of enclosure is neither constant nor indispensable nor sufficient in disciplinary machinery. The machinery works space in a much more flexible and detailed way. It does this first of all on the principle of elementary location or partitioning. Each individual has his own space, and each place its individual. As has already been discussed, we can understand the way the JRC is arranged with different floors for the new students, and those deemed to be low functioning or autistic like, and those deemed to be high functioning or cognitively typical, as an example of this technique in action. Fucking bastards. Oh, because you can't pretend to be neurotypical even though it's killing you on the inside. Fuck me. Interestingly, even the rewards area is divided into spaces for high and low functioning students, with a teen lounge and a basketball court for those classified as cognitively typical, and a ball pit and a merry-go-round for those labeled as autistic or with intellectual disabilities. Are you fucking kidding me? Really? Oh, but you're all about helping grown adults become more independent. But you're gonna treat them like children just because they don't measure up to your frame of normal. None of us are fucking normal, you bastards. Really? This is what I mean, folks. This is the kind of shit that they pull. If you do not conform to their idea of fucking normal, if you don't keep your mouth shut while your fellow students are being tortured to fuck around you, if you dare stand up for yourself and try to say something, if you don't just sit there, close your mouth, do what they tell you and take it, then they're going to continue to treat you like a fucking child. And you know what? Even if you do those things, guess what? You one of those autistic students? Ball pit for you. Fucking ridiculous. Thirdly, Falcott, 1977, describes how discipline is employed in disciplinary institutions. No, I'm sorry, I gotta stop. Autistics have been fucking infantilized for eons, folks. Eons. No matter where we are on the spectrum on that particular moment for that particular day, we are constantly treated and spoke to as children. Yes, even me. Even me. It's garbage. It comes from the medical model. And for the love of God, it is 2022. Obviously, we see it's bullshit. Quit infantilizing people with disabilities. Stop. God, I hate people. Thirdly, Falcott describes how discipline is employed in disciplinary institutions to create sites that are functional or medically useful. By this, he's referring to spaces that correspond not only to the need to supervise, to break dangerous communications, but also to create a useful space. Dangerous communications, you mean that which they have with the outside world to tell them about the psychopaths? The arrangement of fiscal and economic supervision preceded the techniques of medical observation, placing inmates under lock and key, recording their use. A little later, a system was worked out to verify the real number of patients, their identity, the units to which they belonged. Then one began to regulate their comings and goings, where they were forced to remain in their wards. Gradually, an administrative and political space was articulated upon a therapeutic space. It tended to individualize bodies, diseases, symptoms, lives, and deaths. It constituted a relatable, juxtaposed, and carefully distinct singularity. Alright, we're going to stop there. Because we went over quite a bit. So these people are already doing horrific things to every single student in that damn building. But people with neurological disabilities, like autism, like Down syndrome, like Angelman syndrome, like ADHD, we get singled out. You notice that? We're singled out for punishment. We're singled out for childhood-like treatment. We're singled out for subpar education. We're singled out to do meaningless fucking tasks, 8 hours a fucking day, 7 days a goddamn week with no rest. It is goddamn ridiculous. And apparently, that was also kept in mind even in the school. Even in the school. It's utterly ridiculous. The fact that this idea goes right down to design. It's disgusting, folks. And they want to reinforce that into these kids. They want to reinforce you're always going to be like a child. You know what? Because when said child grows up, if they dare find their power, oh, we can't have that now, can we? On that note, folks, I'm going to go ahead and close out this afternoon. We don't get very many views on this channel, especially on this subject. The few that we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So, folks, please don't forget to hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon. And as always, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. Bye, all.